Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. Feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out. Best way to do this is through email and YouTube. Alright, so I'm on a lot of different audio platforms, so it won't be hard to find me. Okay, so the topic of choice here. Alright, since yesterday was Mother's Day, this is what I'm going to do. Sitcoms, primarily, are the capstone. They say a lot about the social landscape of our society. So, this episode is going to focus in on my thoughts on that. Here we go. All right, mom, all the above, mother, in different languages, means something, very sentimental. Now, when we look at sitcoms in the golden age and then so forth, they transition and they look a whole lot different, don't they? Now, what do I mean by that and what my take on that? So, some say that, which, to a certain extent, yes, okay, I can see that. Now, golden era, when we get into I Love Lucy, we get Leave It to Beaver, we get Ozzie and Harriet and so forth. The way that women and the disposition in their place in society is a whole lot different than when you see with, something like a show like Maude or All in the Family or, what's his name? I forgot the guy's name who created a little show, series. Anything that he created, where it goes one day at a time, all of those. The Jeffersons. It's vastly different than you get the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and I guess sitcoms are kind of here and there now, but you get the point. Women and their roles were a lot different. And so I think it's really funny, with, like I said, Leave It to Beaver. Well, let me start with I Love Lucy. I thought Lucille Ball, she was really a really, really great example to me of how that is very prevalent for a woman to be funny and, not take that on in her personal life, because I remember her saying quite candidly that she was a student of comedy, which means that she took it as a precise art form, that she necessarily isn't, particularly that in real life. That was separate. And so, me being a little girl seeing things like this, it's inspiring, in a good way, right? That this whole agenda being pushed where, there's not really a whole lot of emphasis on the importance of pretty much meaning crapping on the imagery or the understanding of being a quote unquote domestic goddess or whatever you want to say about that. I Love Lucy is a good blend of how being traditional but also having aspirations outside of the house can work if you wanted to. Because even though with the campiness and the goofiness of that show, you still saw her character, get out in the world, put some input and put some forethought in that, right? And so even shows like Leave It to Beaver, where the mom was essentially what she did, where she was, her role was in the home. There were still implements about her giving advice to her sons. And it's quite interesting because it showed the dynamics of the importance of a two-family household, of a male perspective and a female perspective. Because they emphasize how the mother is there to reinforce the aspects of how important it is to be very diplomatic or soft tone or nurturing when it comes to certain issues that boys don't really understand how that works. And then the dad is there and was there to input and put his advice about how things go and how you should conduct yourself as a boy, and which leads to the foundation of becoming a very productive man in society. And so that's what I think is missing a lot in the aspects of people going back here. From my point of view, when they say this whole thing about how glorifying the aspects of motherhood, of being at home and staying at home. See, that's a issue with, just because you don't like that certain aspects of that's not very entertaining to you. You project your own insecurities or neuroses or what have you onto something that shouldn't be there, and it becomes a snowball effect of a problem. That's what I think. Me personally, I think it's wonderful to have those aspirations ultimately to be traditional. I think it's a huge accomplishment to be a wife, to be a mother, and to contribute that way into our society. Because think about it like this, which I've understood that quite early on. I got that. I saw that personally, right? I saw the benefits of that personally, both for the way that I can explain this, for the good part of it, right? And I saw that how not having that, why that is very destructive. So, both coins, right? That's what I mean. So getting back to my point here. Now, think about it like this. And that was very lucid for this lady to tell me this, which is very true, right? So how you get the quintessential dysfunctional worker, the images. You've seen these images a lot in film. You've seen television. What have you. This is very prevalent in our society of how problematic that is. Now, what do you think these things stem from? Some say, oh, well, that's the prongs, or that's the problem with capitalism, right? Some say, well, danged if you do, you're danged if you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It's a rat race. You just get what you get. It's all, everything, dog eat dog, man for itself, woman for itself, what have you, right? Some take another view. What I simply think is, you cannot deny the importance of being brought up in a good household. Now, what this means is, it's very important to have different perspectives about things. Now, when you have one point of view, even though it's necessarily most of the time, some of the times, it's unfortunate with the outliers of, a death being, the splitting up the family, and it's, where it's left to either the mother or the father to be the sole proprietor. But then even in itself, I'll get back to that. That is something where, if it's implemented right, that can be very successful in how the child is reared and how the child develops too. Well, traditionally for a man and a woman, to raise a child and to give them guidance and understanding, that's the benefit and the beauty and the gift that it is to be a parent. Because ultimately, for a mother, and very blessed to have that honor bestowed upon me. A mother is supposed to be the one to remind the household what it is. Well, come on, let's be slow paced. Let's, take a step back, right? And let's be, very forefront in that. Now, you can't deny the aspects that men and women are different. When you get in the aspects of the emotional input of things versus the rationality of things, of how most issues are addressed. That's when you need that balance with the male role, with reassuring what your mom is telling you. So I'll give you a really good example of that. Okay. When, let's say, I'm trying to think here. There's a lot of really good examples. Potty training. It seems simple, right? But it's when you get into y'all, you all as parents know what I mean. You get into the midst of it, it's not so much. So this is the transition in which, when you really think about it, about the aspects of discipline and control. Okay, that's essentially what it is. And so when your child, that's what children do. They test the limits. They see. And then also, it's an implement of parenting too, and reinforcing what you have at that point have taught your child, and then how that goes along in their development. And so when the child messes up, it really is a division between the way in which the two parents resolve the problem. Okay, you know, everybody's human, of course. Your gut reaction, as a female, from my point of view, as a woman, you're like, oh, my baby, like, wow, poor baby, at first, when they had their first accident. But you have to snap yourself back and say, you know what? That's when you know that you're in a solid relationship, and you yourself are grounded in yourself, and you can get outside of yourself. When you have that mentality to listen to your husband. At that point to say, let's not be so high, at high octane with the emotion of it's fine. They'll get this is going to be a transitional period. It will. You just have to it's nothing to you. It's nothing to them. You just have to rehash and show them different guidelines in order to improve on what they're doing. And of course, there's going to be repeated mistakes, and it's just going to be relentless until the child eventually understands and is successful. And also, another good example to add on to this to reinforce this about the aspects of disposition with emotion versus not always using that gut instinct to go to emotion, to refrain from it and see the rationality. And that's why it's very helpful to have a very solid relationship with your husband, your spouse, and to actually listen to him and actually to see how he deals with situations, and see and actually hear and feel and have empathy of how he thinks, is when this is reinforced heavily when your child gets hurt, for the first time or what have you. Now, me, when I was a new mom, I was like, when Katie is our oldest. And to put it in perspective, we have very young children. Now, Katie, she's 6 now. She will be 7. Coming up here pretty soon. She's having a birthday. And all the way to, we have 3 kids. We have one son. He's 5. And then our youngest is 4. She's 4. All right. So when Katie was about, she was about 5 or 6 months, almost around then, right? Going on around that age, right? She had bumped her elbow or bump, and then she had she had bumped herself when she was trying to stand up and moving around in a crib and everything. And then I'm like, my reaction, is being a new mom and all of this thing. And my husband, he graciously said, well, Mary, it's okay. She will be fine. If she's not hurt, it's fine. She's okay. Right? Now, even though it's pushed to be that, unfortunately, to, emphasize this whole negative banshee image of, well, I think that getting a Dragon Ball Z stance, for about 5 hours, a relentless Dragon Ball Z stance, and shouting him down. That's not, you that's not even your believe it or not, children internalize these things and they see these dynamics, and they're gonna think that it's, especially for a girl, they're gonna think that's fine to have that disposition. But I didn't want that. I didn't want to, I didn't want to say, well, what I think is right and da da da, because I'm just not, honestly, I'm not that kind of person. I can see my shortcomings. Yes, I have flaws and faults and stuff, and sometimes it takes me a little longer to get there on certain subjects, but I ultimately do my best and evolve to get there, right? But I said, you know what? Yeah. And so that was very helpful because when serious stuff can happen, like the older that they get, that can happen them, or breaking a bone or something, it sets up to be very rational and calm when it comes to that situation. Because if you're not, and you just in panic mode, and you emote a stereotype about what a woman is, that will hinder the child, and that would be very troublesome for the situation. Now, going back to a non-traditional family, when I said about the aspects of, death in the family ultimately, now it's very important too, and the foremost of the rearing of the child, that adage is very true. When it takes a village to raise a child, even though, even in a two household traditional male woman family, it still takes a village sometimes to raise these children. Now, that's when it's really even more important for male-female roles to be there, because those children are missing that, and it's just like, having half of the solution to something, or eating half, having half of giving half advice to something, and where do you go with a half advice to something that's not really helpful? And so when the agenda is being pushed, where a same-sex house, let's flip the script and say, well, a same-sex household, you should be able to be, you can still have a productive child. See, that's where it falls to pieces. Because I mentioned, now this is my perspective. You all have your own points of views. I'm just simply telling you from a conservative viewpoint, from a female viewpoint, and also happen to be African American viewpoint here. That just don't cut the mustard. Because, like I said, it's like going into somebody giving you, half advice about something. You need the full picture. And that's what I'm saying with that. And that's what needs to be understood, in the rationality behind it, and get out of the emotion of, saying, well, which is being emphasized and stressed today about emoting. You're a bigot because of you don't have sympathy. You must accept that it's fine for children to be reared in two-sex household. When you have to understand, it's not about what you think or how you feel. It's about excuse me, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back here. Sorry about that. Okay, so like I said before, that's where you can really see who is tolerant, what's intolerant. Some, of course, common sense say, not, there are people who are very intolerant and so forth. But no, the common ground here is that's not what what the issue is about with having a same-sex household. What the issue here is that it's all about, it's important for the child to understand what it means to see things from a female perspective and what it means to see things from a male perspective. What's the harm in that? That in itself is what makes a very well-rounded individual, okay? And so when you have parents that don't want that, that expels a lot about what you're actually saying. Do you want that destruction, or do you want to actually be a decent parent? What are you saying? And so this is where sitcoms come in to reinforce these ideas, okay? And like I said about earlier, hold on, my child. Piper, I'm out here, baby. Come here. Come here. No, go. No, yeah. Watch out. No, this way. Come here. Right here. No, don't step right there. Come here. Right here. Come here. Hold on. Why don't you go inside? No. You don't need that on. You know that, right?
I don't want it on.
Okay. Let me finish what I'm saying, okay? Alright, so, like I said, with sitcoms, it's where that comes in, where they reinforce the ideas, right? Alright, so as you go on from the 50s, you move on to the 60s and the 70s, there is very evident transitions about the perspectives of child rearing and parental roles being changed. One of the really good examples of this is the Partridge Family. Okay, how having a new idea about being a single mother. How the whimsy that can be with that, and then even adding that on to that, they're all a traveling band, all that.
Well, please.
No, it's fine, baby. And then I'm trying to think about hold on, because I used to know the name of the show. Let me look it up. Hold on. This man, let me pull it up. Right, Julia. Okay. And now this show was very groundbreaking in the aspects of it. Featured a black African American woman, very graceful, very beautiful looking. But she was also in a role where it was non-traditional. She was in a role where she was a nurse, but she was also a single mom. So that, aspects, I think it premiered around 1968 or so. So that was around the time where you get civil rights movements going on. The women's liberation, women's lib, right in the air. Now, the fact that she's an educated black woman, but what's missing? The male figure, right? And then also, to add on top of that, her child, she has a son. So, that bonding and that nourishment is from male figures is very evident in that how that's, not there, but kind of there, when everything is presented in that show. And that's slowly introducing the aspects of, I'm this boss babe, right, sort of thing. I don't need no man. I can go shape the world the way I want to, okay? Now, when you get in the 1970s, with shows like One Day at a Time, shows like Alice, which was based off the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. You get the mixture of old and new world and the ideas of the progressive understanding of how men and women should be. Things start to shift and change even more to where it looks like that's crap on the idea of traditional family values, of traditional roles in the family, of how beneficial it is, right?
Mom, what are you doing?
Hush, baby. Now, when we get in the 1980s, it's a very interesting perspective because it revitalized itself to say, hey, let's go back to the traditions, but also, even more so, in the traditions of a big family unit, that we're all in it together, we're all a village. And you saw that ever so present in so many sitcoms, where it goes to where it was traditionally needed, where it was understood and needed, when it comes to Full House, and then Family Matters, and then the other shows. Now, also in the 80s, it was emphasizing how when there's not the part of the nuclear unit is gone, hey, we're gonna step up as a family and get this in here together. Yeah, we're gonna step up as a family. Bye, baby.
I'm gonna come in the front.
Okay. We're gonna step up and we're gonna come together as a unit and help. And this is very present in the aspects of a show like Full House. Even with the campiness and everything with it, there was very strong male roles in that show. But the female influence was there needed because why? They're raising young girls. So they need that balance and understanding and perspective, female perspective, in order for these girls to understand this. Now, when we transition into the 90s and 2000s, that was a very interesting twist because it was dealing with the fact of tradition and technology and how does that work. A lot of times, getting all that together, and figuring all these things out. And the aspects, those overtones were going on in the aspects of social development, and how do you still emphasize that in an ever-growing computer age. So with this said, I'd like to know all of your thoughts here. Now, feel free to reach out. The best way to do this is two ways, as I said in the beginning of the show, either email or YouTube. This reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye for now.